Yeah, I know. I mean, I hope I wasn't the reason why, but I think there was so much interference, but I figured if we were gonna use it, it needed. Thank you. It's not high quality in person, but like from this distance, it looks great. It was the remote for the tree, but it didn't work unless you were right on top of it today. So. But it was just black. So I said, well, it doesn't look very Christmassy. If I'm gonna use this to light the tree, we gotta make it look. So. The Home Depot to the rescue. Ace was close. I don't think we've had, usually we have at least one. I mean, if I want to go get Peggy from down the street.
Particularly.
Yeah. Yeah. Mind your manners.
Hold up.
That blistery win.
Tom's the
All right, well, I have 7 p.m., so we'll call this meeting to order. But everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pileski.
Here.
Trustee Berkshire.
Here.
Trustee Delapenna.
Here.
Trustee Domke.
Here.
Trustee Lanisa. Here. Trustee Perkowski.
Here.
Trejo.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We'll move to presentation of the prepared agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Yes. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move to Village Board public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any submitted in advance?
None submitted.
And I'm seeing none in the audience, so we'll move on to officials and staff reports. So under Mayor, before we get to the motions, I first want, and I'm sure she'll highlight some more under her report, but wanted to thank Clerk Burns and all of the board owners who volunteered for a wonderful, successful Winterfest. I think it was fantastic. Thank you to Public Works for all the hard work put in for the decorations around Main Street and in our municipal campus. Police and fire for all the extra effort and all the time that went into making sure the event went off without a hitch. So it was, I thought, a fantastic day. Another thing I just want to address, and I know we sent an email to the board. So in late November, we received notification of a pending merger between Canada Pacific and Kansas City Southern. And so at this time, we're being told that they're anticipating, if that were to go through, 8 additional trains would be going through our tracks through town daily. There is a public comment period open right now, and so we'll be releasing some additional information to residents with some direction on the Thursday e-news. So we're continuing to collaborate with our surrounding communities, and so the administrator and I have been, on calls and attending additional meetings, and so we'll be providing a letter and some additional information to the board and the public momentarily. But felt it was important just to address that and get that out there. But we will be releasing more thorough package of information come later this week. So. With that being the case, I'll move on to our first item. So I'm happy to have our budget conversation. So could I have a motion to open up our public hearing? Have a second?
Second.
And then could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Perkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
All right. I'll turn it over to Tom.
Good evening. So the first item is the public hearing, obviously, for the budget. Tonight caps off a budget process that began in late June after the fiscal year 2020 audit was accepted by the village board. And oh, by the way, the legal notice for the public hearing was printed in the Daily Herald on November 24th, 2021. Estimated revenues for the general fund are $20,120,995, an increase of just over $2 million from fiscal year 2021 budget. That's a very large number, but as we entered 2021, it was unclear what effect the pandemic might have on the village's revenues, and therefore budgeted revenues were much lower than we actually received. It is expected that in 2022, revenues for property taxes, sales taxes, income tax, eating tax, video gaming, and building fees will all increase from 2021. The budget also includes an increase in the ambulance fees for the GEMT rate, as you'll see later. Estimated expenditures for the general fund are $19,587,065, an increase of just under $440,000 from the fiscal year 2021 budget. Part of that is due to 5 new positions that were created and increases in facilities maintenance, commodities, and special events, the centennial next year for the village. Those are the major reasons. Revenues exceed expenditures by $533,930. This is a change, obviously, from what the proposed budget was. Later on in the packet, you'll see the scorecard, which shows the changes that were made. Water sewer operating total revenues estimated at $7,618,000. 98% of this revenue is from water and sewer charges, which includes a slight increase in 2022 again, which you'll see later. And you can see that on the bottom of my chart here. DuPage County is a 60-cent increase and Cook is a 55-cent increase for water and sewer rates only. Expenses are projected to be $7,900,000. Most of that is from DuPage Water Commission, where we purchase our water and personnel costs. Budget also includes $330,000 in some work on the sewer system, sewer lining. Expenses exceed revenues by $283,000, which is a planned spend down, but shows that we are above the board's reserve policy at about 33%. Water sewer capital, another increase, slight increase to 25 cents per thousand gallons. Fees are expected to bring in about $3,177,000 with some other minor like sewer tap on fees and investment income. We do have small projects at both treatment plants, the water main replacement program, SCADA improvements, and some lift station improvements. Much lower than we've done in the last couple of years, where we spent quite a few dollars doing some work at both plants. The capital improvement program, so the budget also includes this program, which is a combines several funds and their revenues, which include utility taxes, motor fuel tax, property tax, and the Rebuild Illinois Fund. In those revenues fund projects, municipal building improvements, the tree reforestation program, some stormwater improvements, the street improvement program, and the surface transportation program as seen here. One thing. Sorry about that. And then there's also a continuation of the sidewalk replacement program throughout town, the streetlight replacement program, and then some parking lot improvements. And that is the bulk of the budget. Obviously, there are several other funds that are not shown, but then they've been presented throughout the time we did the budget, and it's also on our website and the proposed budget. The final budget document will be completed in January and posted to the village's website then. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from the public or the board?
So any members of the public that wish to make a comment in favor of this proposal? Seeing none, any members of the public that wish to make a comment against this proposal? Does the board have any questions or comments at this time? I just like to thank staff for the whole process. I know there was a lot of recalculations and some movement going around during the process this year, but appreciate it all. And I think it reflects a large investment in our community for next year and sets us up to have a broader conversation in the coming months about infrastructure in general. So we have a motion to close the public hearing with a recommendation to adopt. Thank you. Second. All those in favor, roll call. Sorry.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
All right, and then could I have a motion to open a public hearing for the fiscal year ending 2021 proposed tax levy?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
and then roll call, please.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
And Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
And as I forgot to mention before, notice was published in the Daily Herald on Wednesday, November 24th. So Tom, you've got the floor again.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you just took away my first sentence. So the 2020, oops, here we go. 2021, sorry, it's the 2021 tax levy public hearing. So the 2020 EAV was 819,561,000. This was an increase of 2.6% from the year before. I show that only to demonstrate that for the sixth year in a row, we had an increase, the village had an increase in our equalized assessed value. And that's used as the base for the 2021 levy. So the tax cap for 2021 or PTEL is 1.4%. And that is used. So we look at the 2020 extensions, add any new growth. They look at the EAV and the counties calculate the levy. We, as a village levy, we add $25 million in new growth in order to prepare our levy. The levy will then be reduced by the counties when they complete their calculations. In the packet, I presented several history charts, which I'll roll through, and you probably won't be able to see this one very well, but they are in the packet, so you can take a look at them. They include the tax levy history shown here from 2016 till today. There you can see the increase in the EAV each year, and then the amount of the extension every year. This is a Roselle EAV by category for DuPage County, breaks down by residential, commercial, industrial, farm, which is very little, and also railroad. I have a chart showing the increase in the EAV by the category. You can see the residential is obviously the greater proportion of our EAV in this group, and you can see the increase every year as we've emerged from the 2008 debacle that happened. Here's a EAV by category for Cook County. Residential and commercial are the only two property types in Cook. Again, showing residential increasing, although there was a slight decrease in Cook County in 2020. In addition, you can see the village's levy makes up about 10% of a resident's tax bill, typical. It's not exact in everybody's home based on where you live and which, because there are 2 counties, 2 high school districts, 4 park districts, 2 library districts, and 5 elementary school districts. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly, but roughly 10% of your tax bill comes to the village. And then finally, I have a distribution how the money that we collect, where it goes between pensions, the police, fire, EMS, and miscellaneous, which is the general fund portion. That's it. Any questions?
Any member of the public wish to make a comment in support of this? Seeing none, any member of the public wish to make a comment against this proposal? Does the board have any questions or comments at this time? Tom?
This is, I guess, more for my personal edification. What role does the equalization factor play in your calculations for like estimating the EAV for the upcoming year?
So I don't estimate what our EAV may be, only because that, for me, that would be impossible.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, we can gather based on history what the increase may be, 2%, 3%. But that's why we do the 25 million factor, and that incorporates any new growth.
So that doesn't change though, but depending on like if the equalization factor is like 4 as opposed to 2, it's you usually just do 25 million as a blanket.
Exactly. And that pretty much covers us, making sure that we don't go, you know, we're not falling under PTEL. So we're missing out on that, you know, capturing that new growth. 25 million is always a safe assumption that, you know, it'd be hard unless we're in a TIF year, at the end of the TIF, where we're bringing on all of that TIF property where we would say, okay, it may be 100 million or 120 million rather than 25. So we don't have to worry about missing out on, we had 5% growth instead of 2% growth in the EAV, and we missed out on that 3, you know, so the 25 million does cover that whole amount.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, do we have a recommendation to adopt and a motion to close?
The recommendation of adopting the motion to close.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
All right, then I'd ask for a motion to pass an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2022 budget. Is
So moved.
there a second?
I'll second.
We'll do a roll call on that one just for,
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
And Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
that motion carries. And then can I ask for a motion to pass an ordinance authorizing the levy and collection of taxes for the general corporate purposes of the fire protection, police protection, Illinois municipal retirement, paramedic services, debt services, police pension, and firefighter pension for the fiscal year commencing on January 1st, 2022 and ending on December 31st, 2022 for the Village of Roselle, DuPage, and Cook Counties, Illinois.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
thank you. Can I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
And Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you so much. We'll move to village trustee reports. Seeing none, we'll move to,
I'd just like to make one comment.
Yeah.
To the staff, because David, you, as mayor, you told them what a great job they did, but I, as a resident and also a business owner, want to tell you that we really, as residents and business owners, appreciate all the work that you put in to increase the foot traffic around downtown Roselle. So I want to say from a residential standpoint, thank you very, very much.
thank you so much. Any other trustees have a comment? Then we'll go to village clerk.
I don't want to stop the train, so I also want to just thank everybody that helped, and it takes a lot of people to pull off something like that, so a lot of teamwork. And Mother Nature truly looked down on us because Sunday sucked.
That was an ordinance. That was an ordinance from the mayor, I believe.
Yeah,
Was it not?
what a difference a day makes. So we were truly, truly blessed. So thank you to everybody. It was a good day.
All right. Village attorney,
Mr. Mayor, I have no report.
thank you. Village administrator. All right, we have, we'll move on to unfinished business, and for the consent agenda, all items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature, and will be enacted in one motion. There's no discussion on these items. Tonight, I'll ask the attorney to please give us a summary.
The items on the consent agenda tonight are the passage of an ordinance amending the Village of Roselle Code of Ordinances to establish charges or rates for the use and services of the village's combined waterworks and sewerage system. The passage of an ordinance amending ordinance number 80-949, establishing a pay plan for village officers and employees. The adoption of a resolution rescinding resolution number 2021-2458, and authorizing the mayor to sign and the village clerk to attest to a right-of-way improvement agreement with 400 Garage LLC, and the adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign and directing the village clerk to attest to a certain water and sewer line easement agreement between the Village of Roselle and JEA North Point LLC.
And I believe also presentation approval of the village board minutes of November 8th as well.
You're right.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And could I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa,
Aye.
trustee Della Penna,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
and trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Yeah, those motions carry. Thank you so much. Community development, trustee Berkshire.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to open a public hearing for the pre-annexation of 6 North 736 and 6 North 744 Medina Road.
Second.
Did I get a roll call?
Trustee Berkshire,
Yes.
trustee Trejo,
Aye.
trustee Prokowski,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
Aye.
trustee Della Penna,
Aye.
trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
You. So the notice was published in the Daily Herald on November 19th, 2021. And also the notice is on file with the village clerk. So are there any members of the public who wish to ask a question of the petitioner? Seeing none. Any member of the public would like to wish to speak in favor of the petition? Seeing none. Any member of the public wish to speak against the petition? Seeing none. Any questions or comments from the board? Right, seeing none. Then a recommendation to move forward, and I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
It should be all in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, and anyone abstaining, seeing none. All right. So first thing I'd like to do is make a motion to amend each of the pre-annexation agreements to reflect that the owner has 14 days from the date of the passage of the ordinance authorizing the execution of the pre-annexation agreement for 6 North 736 Medina Road to tender to the Village of Roselle the annexation application and escrow fees in the amount of $2,800.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, as this is an ordinance, we'll do a roll call.
Well, this is-
Or,
This the
oh,
motion.
this is just the amendment. I apologize. Thank
So-
you. So yeah, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Then that amendment passes. Thank you.
Then
Then
I'd
a
like-
mileage out of you today, Patty.
Then I'd like to make a motion to amend each pre-annexation agreement to reflect that the owner has 14 days from the date of the passage of the ordinance authorizing the execution of the pre-annexation agreement for 6 North 744 Medina Road to tender to the Village of Roselle the annexation application escrow fees in the amount of $2,800.
Second.
Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that amendment passes. Administrator?
Sorry, Karen's memo also reflects an ask from the property owner to go to 1 year for connection to utilities from the standard 6 months. So what before you says 6 months, and they're asking for a year, given the uniqueness of the installation of the water and sewer, that they be provided up to 1 year to connect to the utilities instead of the standard 6 months. So that's for the board's consideration and possible amendment to the agreement as well, if you want to go with 1 year.
So need another motion on that, or are you just looking for our agreement on it?
Consensus?
You just can. So another motion to amend?
More like when the timing of this is happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts and permitting process, so 6 months is certainly unrealistic and probably can't be met even if they tried. So 1 year is what,
So like to make a motion to amend the pre-annexation agreement for 6 North 736 Medina Road to extend the utilities to,
The deadline for connection to utilities from 6 months to 1 year.
as stated by the village administrator.
There's a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Makes sense.
All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All those opposed, nay.
Okay, so now I'd like to make a motion to amend the pre-annexation agreement for 6 North 744 Medina Road, as stated by the village administrator.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? The amendment passes.
Now, I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance authorizing the execution of the pre-annexation agreement as the two amendments for 6 North 736 Medina Road.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, now we'll do a roll call vote.
Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
And Trustee Domke.
That motion carries.
Then I'd like to make a motion to pass an ordinance authorizing the execution of the pre-annexation agreement as both amendments for 6 North 744 Medina Road.
For a second, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Berkshire.
Yes.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That is it, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Moving through, we have nothing for administration, fire, or police. We'll go to Public Works. Trustee Domke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make an ordinance, make a motion and adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for construction observation services for the Metro 19 development between the Village of Roselle and HR Green Incorporated in the amount of $42,340.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We have nothing on our finance tonight. So we'll go on to new business. We have another opportunity for public comment. Anyone in the public wish to make comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the proposed mailbox replacement policy. So Karen or Kristen?
All right, so I'm here tonight to talk about mailbox policy. Public Works continues to evaluate our internal policies and procedures and are looking to make some recommendations to Village Board to adopt some policies so that it becomes more formalized for the community and for our staff. So we currently don't have a mailbox policy in place. The policy that we're proposing would address any situation, whether it's during a snow event or another event where a village vehicle or piece of equipment strikes a mailbox, a private contractor strikes a mailbox, or snow or ice that comes off of a plow hits a mailbox and may cause damage. So as I noted, we don't have a policy in place. We feel that would be helpful for our staff and the public to be really transparent about what our policy is in practice. So as we get these calls, we can refer them to the website with the information. The policy that's attached highlights several things. It highlights when the village is responsible for replacing a mailbox and when a property owner. What we propose and what our practice has been is the only time that we do replace a mailbox is if we have a direct, like the plow physically hits a mailbox or the back of a truck physically hits a mailbox. In situations where we don't do that is if a mailbox is in disrepair or the snow that comes off, the weight of the snow that comes off the plow hits a mailbox and dislodges the mailbox or does supplemental damage to that, that is something that we consider like an act of nature essentially, and I'm not recommending to replace that. With our mailboxes, we define the policy into two separate things. One, a standard mailbox, which is a typical 4x4 post, which is attached in the exhibit, and a standard black mailbox on top. That is what we have always been replacing the mailboxes with, but we do get many questions regarding very ornate decorative mailboxes. Property owners have chosen or selected to go above and beyond and install very ornate mailboxes that consist of brick or a styrofoam brick or an ornate decorative mailbox that has a lot of, may have a fish, it may have whatever the case may be on their mailbox. We are not recommending replacing those because A, they're hard to come by exactly what, sometimes they're very custom by homeowners, but then also very costly. And it's not something that we feel that the community should be paying for, something that's above and beyond what a standard mailbox installation would be. In those cases, we've gotten many questions about, hey, it's okay, we'll replace it ourselves, but will you give us some sort of reimbursement for what a standard mailbox is? So we did some research, and from our knowledge from other communities, many other communities actually have a reimbursement program in which it's a standard flat fee. If the property owner wants to replace it themselves with whatever they desire, they're reimbursed whatever that dollar amount is. We did reach out to many communities. Some communities don't do any mailbox replacement. Their policies, they don't do any. But many of them have anywhere from a $50 to $100 range, with many of them are about the $100 range. For reference for us, it costs about $60 just to get the materials for the mailbox, and that doesn't include any of our cost to remove or install the mailbox ourselves. And then also with this policy, it just defines basically our procedure. Once a mailbox is damaged, here's how you report that information. You either report that information through our online portal, or you contact Public Works. We will then go out and inspect the damage and provide a temporary mailbox, regardless of who is responsible for the damage. We put a temporary mailbox out there, typically by next business day, so that they can still get their mailbox while we work through that process. And then once we do that inspection, we provide feedback to them as to whose responsibility it is to replace that and what that process would look like if they wanted to replace it themselves versus the village replacing that. And then it also gives a time frame in the spring in which the repairs would need to be done. Typically by Public Works, we want to define what that date is so everyone knows what that date is, and we'll provide flexibility to the property owners if they decide to do that themselves and need to get a contractor on board. It also includes installation from the U.S. Postal Service about what proper installation is. It is very specific with the post office. If you put that too far back, they actually will not deliver your mail. So we wanted to provide some guidance on what the acceptable installation would be as well. So it's a high level overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but again, we're looking to put something in place that could be then put out to the public so that we have some good dialogue and solid information on our website to be able to provide them updates.
Yes, Bruce.
So I noticed you did say temporary mailboxes. There will be in that procedure, you will be continuing that policy.
Absolutely. It's in there right now. The policy that we have in there, we put in there that would be out by the next business day. So sometimes we don't get the calls until late at night. So we wanted to just say that it'd be the next business day that it would be out there. And so our typical process is a standard barricade, and then we've built like a system to put on top of there so that that could be up the entire winter season. We would maintain it if anything happened to it over winter season. And then once either we install the new mailbox or they do, we would remove it.
So my next question has to do with, is there a recommended speed that snowplow should be moving down the street based on the inches of snow that is on the ground? Because that is no longer an act of God based on an individual pushing a snowplow faster down the street.
Yeah, I mean, we typically are about 25 miles an hour-ish. I'll use last year as an example. Last year was a great example of this situation. So we had a lot of snow and we had a lot of wet, heavy snow. When you start having wet, heavy snow, that becomes, when people have mailboxes in disrepair, it starts dislodging those mailboxes. And it's not a speed related item. It's the weight of snow. It's the weight of the wet, heavy snow, and sometimes coupled, but I agree. And we do have a practice in place on that.
The snow moves.
Yes.
The faster it goes, the faster it will move, the heavier
Correct.
that snow will go. It's just physics.
Correct.
So then my next question is there a policy in place? Because I've seen it before and it doesn't seem to be the case any longer, where the larger plows would come by, leave a space, and then the smaller plows, pickup truck like size, would finish that little apron area so that this way the big heavy snow is not exactly right up against the plows. It seems like it's like almost like a finishing thing. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. They come pretty right up to that.
Yeah, so our practice since I've been here and well before I've been here is as our plows come through, the big trucks do everything on the main routes. Our cul-de-sacs, we do use the smaller vehicles, but 9 times out of 10, you need the larger truck. You're moving a large amount of snow across that area. So I don't know that we ever particularly had that process in place. It's been our cul-de-sacs that do that.
Those are all the questions I have.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Wayne.
Temporary can be there till April or May. when
Correct.
Thaws out the land, okay, so And then I just want to thank you for like doing this for a policy because, you know, before when we just did it by person, you never knew if you were doing the right thing for anybody. So it's always great to have a policy. So thanks for putting this in place. And thanks for teaching me about the word windrow, which I had to look.
You're
up.
welcome.
Saw that one before. But it's really a good policy and I think it's pretty adequate to be reimbursing that much. Or then even the one that you put up looks pretty nice to me. You know, so good
We-
policy.
The only concern I have on this, and I don't know if, I guess when this comes into play versus other types of damage, but I mean, we had mentioned the non-standard mailbox. I mean, if I went through the trouble of spending whatever I spent, $1,000 on a mailbox, and a snowplow slams into it and knocks it down, why wouldn't the village pay for it? I guess is my question.
That's something we can discuss as part, we've had this discussion as part of IRMA claims in the past.
And so is there a different policy that would like cover that? Because I'm not online with, like, if I have a mailbox and the village slams into it, like, I'm not gonna be okay with just getting $100 mailbox if I spend $5,000 on a mailbox.
Do you want to comment on that, Administrator? Or?
Attorney Knippens kind of provided some feedback based on that, you know, depending on the circumstances, the village has tort immunity, which, you know, we're not necessarily responsible for certain things if it's not willful and wanton, depreciated value of an asset. And like typically like in a car accident, right, you hit the other car, they don't just get a brand new car paid for 100%. There's depreciated value. So, you know, how do you get to that cost of what the replacement is? We've had instances that have been segregated by IRMA of very elaborate mailboxes that in some cases we weren't certain we were responsible. They thought we were. Maybe we contributed something to it, but we also feel that maybe they contributed something to it. So it's a very case-by-case basis. And I don't think that would go away. We would always let residents know they could push stuff through our risk management agency. They would do a review of the circumstances, no different than getting in a car accident. You have an adjuster who kind of reviews all the facts and, you know, comes to a determination, but I think it would really have to be village board policy. The village's deductible is $25,000. So the first $25,000 of any claim, the village is paying 100% of. So these small dollar ones, if you will, really would be directed by village board policy. I'm aware of maybe one since I've been here related to
And that wasn't related to a direct hit. That was.
yeah, and I think we questioned if it wasn't already somewhat unstable, if it didn't already have some cracks. Also, I think we have some questions come up about can a brick mailbox be lawfully installed in our right of way? So sometimes you get into those, are those really permitted to be there to begin with instead of the minimum that's required to just receive mail? So I think there's a lot of involved from that policy side. I think if you wanted to go down the road on looking at more expensive replacements, you may want to also look at your zoning ordinance or other ordinances related to what are you comfortable having in your right of way if you're now saying as a village you're willing to pay for some damage to that, be it a direct hit or other stuff, and kind of the analysis that would go into determining how much you're willing to pay as a village. So that's kind of what was been talked through in the back of our minds with some of this, but it's certainly policy decision and direction. We can always come back with more information too, if you're looking for something more as you kind of discuss this policy.
And other communities I know do have basically their standard policy in their code as a standard mailbox. And if you elect to do a $5,000 brick mailbox, the village allowed it, but you had to sign off on basically a waiver if it had to be moved because of a utility relocation. So if you had a water main project go through that area, I'll use a different example. If you have a water main project go through a block that has 10 of those $5,000 mailboxes, and we have to open that road up, technically they waived that. They knew it would be there. They chose for it to be there. Otherwise, we would be spending astronomical amount of money replacing utilities and other things as well. So other communities have where they allow it, but there's like a waiver essentially.
I mean, that's also on the parkway. That's not a snowplow driving into it. That's something that's on the.
Sure.
That's not their property to begin with. So I see your point about them putting it up and it potentially might not be permitted, but again, to me, something just doesn't sit right. If I damage Bruce's house or something, I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna give you $100, even though if the damage is 10 grand, like, see you later. That just doesn't sit right with me. I mean, I would like to get some sort of more information, some potential options. So, now that we're formalizing it, if there's another avenue that someone could appeal to, like, I think maybe that could be laid out. And then, you know, if it's like an arbitration thing with Irma, they can hear both sides and then make a ruling and say, okay, yeah, we think you're on the hook for 5,000 or whatever, $1,000. I mean, I looked at getting a mailbox installed. It was like $280 for a basic post like this. So I don't even think $100 is enough, even right now. I think it should be about $250 at least.
Unless you have us do it.
Well, yeah, if we, or if we do it, I guess, yeah, that's true. So yeah, the $100 should be fine then, because then we should just do it pretty much.
Bruce, then Wayne.
So thank you, Lee, because you actually reminded me of my other question. So are you anticipating then, because now this is a direct hit, no longer snow, no longer, that this will go down, that we will have less of these replacements?
I would say that more of our replacements last year had to do with the fact that we didn't have a formalized policy and many of them were for snow damage last year. We hardly had any direct hits last
So
year.
my direct answer to my question is, yes, it will go down because you had no direct hits. So then I'm back to with an agreement with Lee. If our vehicle hits it, because that is what we're really now focusing on, we should be liable for something like that. I also agree that I would look at it and saying, who's going to be the mediator? Because I'm not going to trust you, you're not going to trust me, and we're going to come down to some stalemate on this. So we need to have that as part of the policy, because, and then we should also then, if you're going to enact this policy, put something in place that says, you are the one responsible, you are the one making the decision. So basically what I'm saying is you've just now opened up the can, and I want everything to come out of it. So I'm looking for a policy then that will say that you are now responsible for putting this on here, that the village says you're okay with it. And that's not, and then that's your problem if you decide to do it. And the only time this will be handled, and you're responsible for everything associated with it. Street comes in, we have to do construction on that street, and your mailbox is in the way, not our problem, et cetera, et cetera. Because Jason, as much as I like to hear about the fact that you put it on your parkway and you come and take care of your parkway, because you can open that can of worms. I'll just start growing corn on it. Not mine, it's not my property. So that's why I'm getting kind of like this, because if we're going to play these games, this is the kind of stuff, and I don't mean by games, sorry, wrong word. If we're going to start putting more formalized policies in, which I think are the right thing to do, and we got to look at all of this stuff and all the, as you start pulling that thread, because you don't want that whole sweater to just kind of unravel at you. So that's my question as well as my opinion on this.
Understood.
Wayne?
Yeah, I guess something that Bruce was saying and Lee, if somebody does build the mailbox on steroids, there's certain restrictions on what you can build really close to a roadway, like on the expressways or on streets that needs to be kind of a breakaway item. I've seen some residents that are putting some rather huge stones really close to the curb as they're trying to make a point. But, somebody that would hit one of those with a car and get injured in their car, or the car is damaged, so to their point, maybe there has to be some kind of you have an approval process on the mailboxes. There should be something like that for just safety purposes, if no other reason. And then I was going to ask one other question that is another intangible that I just thought about. What does Flood Brothers policy say? Because if they hit the mailbox and they don't do anything, are the residents going to say that we hit it and now they get a mailbox on Flood Brothers? So what do you do? How do you prove that it was the village that did it? Maybe my teenage son backed into it or something. How are we gonna? But it seems so simple when I first read this, and when these questions come up, it does get a little bit more like the Pandora's box. So I think maybe there must be some other things that the villages that you use as examples might have already learned from that, or their legal counsel learned from that, that we might have to add a few more things in on this. before going forward. But it is still a good idea to bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, Tom.
Anybody happen to know if this would be something you could turn in on your homeowner's insurance? Versus the village?
Deductible.
Well, yeah, but it isn't $25,000. We could pay their deductible and it might be cheaper.
But then you run into the
That's a
potential,
claim, and then they-
then you've got a claim on your homeowners, which then has other ramifications that I'm certainly sure that no one's going to be claiming on a mailbox. I mean, claim a broken window, which is probably more drastic, and you got a much larger issue at hand.
So where do we go now?
Any other thought? Well, I want to make sure, Tom and Cheryl, do you have anything that,
My other thought was, you talked about that the plow drivers were going to go around ahead.
Correct.
And reading that, you're making the plow driver is going to be making the judgment call on each and every mailbox on their route as to whether it is.
Yeah, so, yeah, we go around ahead of time because there are some mailboxes that are just, I mean, you could drive by as a homeowner and just, it's evident that they need repairs. So we don't want false claims essentially. So ahead of the snow season, our drivers go on their route and they look for things such as mailboxes that are in disrepair. They look for the person who has their basketball hoop at the end of the driveway that may catch on things that are safety hazards. And so they note, hey, we saw this mailbox at 555, whatever. And then we would send them a letter basically saying your mailbox is in disrepair currently. And, please fix that ahead of time if you can. And then, so if we were to get a claim from them, it was already noted as being damaged.
So if they fix it in the meantime, it's no longer in disrepair.
They would need to contact us and let us know to ensure that it was correct.
I-
Or just email us back and we've repaired it and we'll go back out and check it.
Okay, I just think that would need to be
Sure.
added.
Tom?
Just curious, are custom mailboxes, do they need a permit to put those in right now, or can you just do it without?
My understanding is that we do not have a permit to install mailboxes. And I believe that our code does not specify the type of mailbox, correct, Karen?
Would it help
that's
if
correct.
like you kind of specified like certain types of mailboxes would need a permit, then you could have that kind of thing you were talking about with the waiver kind of be triggered moving forward?
That would be something we could discuss, correct?
Lee?
Yeah, and I was gonna say that too as a follow-up. I mean, I'm totally on board with that. Like, if we have, even if it's some superficial fee, like $10 or something, just to kind of make sure that people know, like, if you're gonna do this, expensive mailbox, like, there could be risks here if there's, to your point, a water
Mhm.
main, like something that's not even damaged by the village.
Correct.
Or, the snowplow, whatever it is. This is the new policy starting here, that if you put a custom mailbox after this date, we're only gonna cover something. At least there, everyone goes in eyes wide open. It says, hey, the maximum I'm gonna get back is $150 or $100, or whatever we ended up deciding. But I do think right now, because it's silent, I mean, it's essentially not prohibited, it's not allowed. So, I mean, to me, it's just a tough pill to swallow if someone actually has a driver slam into it or, take it down and it's a few $1,000s to only get $100 back.
Bruce?
Sorry, my question was off something with Lee. You said going forward, is there a way that we can just kind of make some sort of announcement that, hey, you didn't have to get a permit, going forward, you'll have to, but by the way, starting this day on, anything that's other than a post with a mailbox on it is
Hmm.
considered custom. I mean, I think we would want to define that so that we don't have someone that has, well, I was grandfathered in, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure we go, not just I want to go retro
Find
on
in the
this one.
code, so anybody looked at the code and our
Yeah.
So
requirements.
before I pose that question to the attorney on that one, I just want to summarize where we're at to make sure I have the right tenure of the board here. So I think overall, we're in alignment with the policy. There's a ask to add a or kind of a mediation option there as well. So that way outlining the process with IRMA and how claims can be filed and submitted and what that process looks like at a high level for residents. Kind of providing more clarity around the documentation process that we currently have and just making it clear that they need to follow up with us to record that remediation of a disrepaired mailbox. And then I think we need to have some sort of a waiver developed to kind of make it clear for any classified as non-traditional or monument style mailboxes that they're waiving the village or they're waiving the right to contest it being removed or the non-standard conformity of that. Is that what I'm gathering from the group right now at this point in time? And then my question to Bruce's point is to kind of clean up the fact that we have non-standard mailboxes out there today. Are we able to notify them and require them to sign that waiver policy retroactively so that way they know going forward what risks they've taken with that mailbox? Or is that challenging because of the federal circumstances of mail delivery and disrupting potentially their?
Yeah, I think it's challenging. I think you can go and enact an ordinance going forward that any mailbox that's installed after certain date certain, that you've put them on notice and, that they have to comply with whatever you decide to put in that ordinance and those code or that policy. But to have it apply retroactively, I don't think that can be done.
And we could, if they wanted to voluntarily comply with it, they could, but we
Yes.
could never require,
Yes,
correct?
you
Okay.
can always seek voluntary compliance and ask them, but if they should oppose it, you would have to back down.
So I guess, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't looking for them to come in and sign any kind of waiver or anything. What I'm really just simply saying is saying a notification out that says, look, you have it. We've got a new policy in place. You got in before that. But should we have any issue with that?
This is your,
This is it. That's what I'm getting, because I
So
know,
more
I hear
just
what
the
you're saying, Lee, that, look, I put it in. Now, if a truck hits it, there's a different story. I'm then back to, you should probably look at this a little bit closer, but the fact of the matter is the plow's going to come by, snow's going to hit it. And as I think, Jason, you were alluding to one of them, it was cracked, it was damaged, and we can see that. I want this notification to be out there so that someone realizes that I'm not going to get a free, I'll wait till spring and I'll call and get a new mailbox because my brickwork's falling apart.
gotcha. And that would be, okay, so more just notification of the policy and that
Yeah.
would be specific for the non-standard mailboxes.
Exactly.
Perfect. Okay.
One more question.
Yeah.
Now that you brought up, it might be a federal issue too. Do you know if there's a USPS policy if the mailman takes out your mailbox?
I
And
do-
what they're
I do not.
okay.
I do not. I
be
can,
no different, just a different time of year.
I can certainly look into that.
I don't know that they would be paying $5,000 if they not go.
Mhm.
Either, but it'd be good to know.
Yeah, that's what they'll end up doing is, hey, your mail's over here.
So, any other things that we're missing from a board perspective before I make sure staff understands? All right. Does that feel like enough direction, Karen?
Does.
for
So
your side?
we'll look at all the information and at a future board meeting, we'll bring something back for future consideration.
Glad you
Perfect.
brought it up, aren't you?
Do it before May. because-
Right.
And I guess with, does the board need the waiver in order to approve something? Because I'm just thinking out loud here at this time, we're going into the season right now, so I hope that there's no snow for as long as possible, but inevitably that will come upon us. Is that something that in the effort to try to have something in place for this year, is that a possibility, or do we want to really wait for next year for this to be in full force, I guess is my question to the board.
Well, can we approve-
Because I don't think anyone's building a mailbox this season, so I feel like the waiver could be produced by the spring.
I would say that the waiver portion of it, or the code ordinance that we're going to change, that could wait.
Yeah, so as long as we get this
Notification piece
policy,
I'd like to get out
Yep.
there because
Hmm.
of the fact that there are these out there and there are probably people that may have a damaged mailbox.
yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure, because I think that's one, I mean, not to say that you're going to get this done in a week, but that way we can get the policy in place as soon as possible to help produce some transparency to the community. And then we can continue to work on the additional kind of code piece of it throughout the early spring to get that done, so. Yeah.
Karen, how many mailboxes per year do you think actually get damaged?
So last year we had 20. Last year was a high year because of the amount of snow and how heavy and wet the snow was. Typically, I would say it's more around 10, but they aren't always direct hits. It's more these requests that come in for mailboxes that have been hit by snow.
We're not talking a huge quantity.
Mm-mm.
Not everybody in Roselle is.
No.
No. And I think what was said before, I'll just say again, I think it's great that we're actually going to have a policy we can direct residents that staff can stand on. And that way there's no question of, well, I get a better deal if I talk to so-and-so in the department versus, person, X. And that way we've got a standard level playing field for everyone. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
Next for the night, we have the ambulance user fee increase. So Chief?
Well, if you'd have just,
Don't hit a
if you'd
mailbox.
have just sent it in by mail, we would have been all fine.
Don't hit a mailbox with the ambulance, okay?
Last month, we came to the board, presented the ambulance user fee increase and received direction from the board to proceed with that increase. In the process of rewriting the ordinance, going back to 2013, we realized there was 3 additional charges that was in the original ordinance from 2013 that we wanted to address. Wanted to be totally transparent with the community and with the board, and to make sure that we had the proper direction from the board. The 3 additional charges they have as part of the current ambulance ordinance is the extrication charge, a per mileage charge, and an ALS non-transport response fee. I'll break them down real quick for you. Probably the most important one is the mileage or the per mile fee. So basically, as part of the ambulance billing, that the residents, in addition to the ambulance rate, are charged a per mile loaded fee. So how many miles it is from wherever we pick that patient up to the facility we're transporting to. Currently, we're charging $15 per mile for a resident and $20 for non-resident, which once again goes back to 2013. I checked with PBS, our billing contractor, and basically they have rates that are anywhere from $10 per mile up to $45 per mile. We are recommending the $20 per mile. According to PBS, that is by far and wide what the majority of their clients are charging is $20 per mile. For us, we have short transports to the hospital, so it's not a significant issue when it comes to revenue. Where it becomes more important is as we look regionally, is especially next year, we're having to report to Medicare as a part of their program, 1 year of our revenues and our sources. And that $20 becomes really more important as we look at the Medicare calculations and when they calculate those revenues for the region. And so we prefer to stay consistent with the majority of the other providers in the region at the $20 per mile. So that'd be the first one that we'd be asking for. The other 2 categories, the extrication, the ALS non-transport, I call them really more of a convenience to us. We don't charge it that often. I could probably count on one hand how many times I've charged it since I've been here, but it's more of a tool for us. The first one is the extrication charge. Currently, that if we provide extrication on the scene, the resident's rate was $450 per extrication, and the non-resident was $600. The only time that we've ever charged that to anybody is when we have a drunk driver and we go for restitution through the state's attorney's office. If it's a particular accident where there is extrication, allows us to provide an additional charge to the state's attorney's office so we can get restitution for that. So any other time, if it's just a regular accident extrication where we have to provide extrication, we do not charge that. So the only time that we've ever charged that is for restitution to the state's attorney's office. And so we like to leave that in there at that $450 flat rate across the board. The second one is the ALS non-transport response fee. Currently $150 for resident and $250 for non-resident. What that fee is if we go out and we provide advanced treatment and then the patient refuses to go to the hospital, then we have the ability to recoup some of our costs for the use of those materials. The most common case for us is a diabetic emergency, where we go out to a resident's house, they have a low blood sugar, we start an IV on them, we provide them a medication to bring up their blood sugar. All of a sudden, they are feeling better, they fixed, they don't want to go to the hospital, and they want to refuse to transport. It gives us the ability to be able to recoup those costs. Once again, on a regular case basis, if we go out to the residents one time and they refuse, we have not charged. We use this as a tool. So if we go to a resident 5 or 6 times and becomes the consistent, allows us to be able to bill them and kind of encourage them to a different way to approach it, taking care of their health and not using the ambulance as the urgent care for their health service needs. So basically what we have proposed is leaving the ALS non-transport fee at $150, which is the current resident rate. The extrication fee at $450, which is the current resident rate. And then having the mileage rate adjusted to $20 fee across the board. So we just want to make sure that is consistent with the board's wishes and want to make sure that everybody's good with that before we go ahead and finalize the ordinance for next meeting.
Wayne, is 450 going to cover resident and non-resident, or is it still going to be 450 and 600?
It'd be 450 across the board, so we're consistent with the rest of the ordinance where we're charging one flat fee.
So for the non-residents, it's a better deal.
Yeah, hopefully, once again, that they're not getting into the accidents where they're drunk driving and we have to turn it over to the state's attorney.
I see.
And obviously, if you guys feel different about that and want to increase or decrease that based on what we're using for, we're obviously open to that also.
Bruce?
So my first question is going to start with the extrication. Do we have to worry about any kind of consistency that, well, we didn't do it here and we charged them, but over here we did? Do we have any kind of concern? Someone may come back and say, well, you didn't do it there, but you did it here.
I don't think, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I said, personally, I don't think we have a concern because we've used it so little. And like I said, we use it just for the state's attorney and they approve it, but it'd probably be a better question for the attorney than me.
Do you have any opinion on that?
Not at the moment. I can look into that.
Just worried that someone's going to come back and say you're not consistent. And then that brings me to the next one where you talked about the $150. Is there a certain number? Like, okay, we'll give you the first one. The first one's a freebie, then the next one's not, because again, we're leaving ourselves for, well, so-and-so got one, I didn't get it.
By policy or by ordinance, we can definitely tie a number to that. I would have no issue with that once again, we're using more of as a tool.
I think we should. I think we should because of the fact that I get it. You're going to get it. Someone's not, and they're like, I'm fine. And some people are just doing that because I don't want to go to the hospital. But there are going to be those people that are like, pump me up and I'm done and I don't have to go. And you're saving me from that. So I think we should have if there's a frequency situation like that, we should start then, hey, the next one you're going to be charged on. The next question I have is really about understanding the ambulance itself in terms of maintenance and the like, oil changes and so forth. Because is that where we're going to use some of this mileage thing because it's being used and therefore is this to help to offset some of that? I just don't know how we typically handle maintenance of something.
For us, goes into the general revenue fund as everything else. So it gets, picked up as part of, vehicle maintenance and everything that goes into the general revenue fund. And like I said, for us, it doesn't make a huge difference for us. Where it makes a big difference is for those providers that have longer transport times or are in rural areas where they may have a 30-minute transport or a 30-minute or a 30-mile transport. It helps them be able to adjust their costs because obviously they're out of service more. They have a longer transport time, more wear and tear on the vehicles, and it allows them to be able to recoup those costs. From our standpoint, is it making a big difference? No. To us personally as a village, because of our short transport times, doesn't make a big difference in the big scheme of things for providers in general of the region, for those providers who have longer transport times and where they have to transport farther distances, it makes a significant difference.
And so my final question that has to do with where do we decide and how is that decided upon? Because going out to Wheaton is a heck of a lot longer of a drive than going out to Elk Grove Village. So I was just curious how those are decided upon.
For our policy, it's a two-pronged approach. The first part is it's by distance. The state of Illinois, Illinois Department of Public Health determines we have to transport to the closest appropriate facility. And so they look at us, and for us, our closest appropriate facilities for what I would call our everyday transports would be Alexian Brothers, St. Alexis, Central DuPage, and Glen Oaks. The four closest hospitals in general sense, depending on where you are within the village, they're all a relatively close distance. Then the second prong of that is the closest appropriate facility. We know that if it's a traumatic event, we have to transport to Good Samaritan Hospital, which is a little bit longer. If it's a stroke patient, we're going to transport to Alexian Brothers or CDH. If it's a pediatric emergency that needs advanced care, then we're going to transport to Central DuPage Hospital. So those are those extenuating circumstances. But for the majority of our transports, the four closest hospitals are where we transport by law.
And that just reminded me of one other thing, sorry, David,
Good.
is that do we need to stipulate what that mileage, when the clock starts, when it stops, that kind of thing? I mean, I'm just,
Yeah,
Where people are gonna-
starts and stops is determined by Medicare, and the way our billing department works is they will put it on the map and they look at the shortest, most appropriate route and map it out. So our guys aren't having to keep track, and so they basically go on, quite honestly, go on to Google, say, okay, from the residence to ABMC was 1.7 miles, and that's what's billed. So there's
Okay.
consistency.
yeah, I just wasn't sure if they had, that's what I was concerned with, that they'd have to keep some sort of log or anything like that. All right, thank you.
Interestingly enough, this Medicare makes us bill to the 10th of a mile too. So
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Cheryl?
Mine is like, it's like splitting hairs here, but on the extrication, why would we not stay at the 600 for everybody? Just make it, if you're
think
not,
from-
if
I
the
think from
residents,
our point in staff standpoint was is that we have a significant increase in our ambulance fees, and that coming back and bringing those numbers together, that we felt for the lack of time we use it, and to sit there and not to, I guess, upset the apple cart, that just to stay consistent with those the lower two numbers, we thought it would be more accountable.
Other questions or comments from the board? Lee?
I guess the only comment I would make on that though is that if we're only truly charging that, if it's like a DUI to reimburse it, I would rather have the offender pay the 600, if not more, to be honest with you.
Do it either way.
So I guess once we get clarity from legal, I think we should go higher if it's okay for only seeking restitution against someone that's driving drunk.
Yeah, and I guess if we could have that ideally, because we were targeting this for next Monday, if we could have a memo provided to the board perhaps before the end of the week, or really ideally by midweek, so that way we can get feedback by Friday for agenda purposes. That would be helpful. I don't know if that's something Jim can,
All right.
I'll ask and you can let me know later. Tom P.
If we don't, actually, sorry, so if we don't get that, then I'm all right with the 450 though. That way, if we have to apply it everywhere, I'd rather have it just be lower.
So just to clarify, these three things, you generally, aside from the mileage, you kind of keep referring them as tools, as kind of, if that's the case, I actually am curious what other people would think about not setting exact parameters and giving you as much flexibility as you can on a case-by-case basis, just to keep the ordinances kind of clean and to not tie your hands. I'm just curious if what other people think about that.
Personally, my concern goes back to that consistency and judgment calls, and that's the reason I was nervous about. We have it, but we only use it in certain circumstances. If we can get away with if that's okay, then I would like to just kind of put the dollar amounts down there, because then someone doesn't come back and say, well, where's that at? How do I know how much it is? But I would also agree, I like what Lee's proposing, that if we're going to only use it under this one circumstance, then we might as well hit the higher dollar amount.
Other thoughts on the group?
We go with the higher dollar amount.
Okay. I'm gonna say no on flexibility, but yes to higher dollar amounts for both, or just the extrication.
I was just on the extrication.
Okay,
So was I.
Yeah. all right.
But only if
Yes. We can't define.
we, right.
Okay.
And I guess just to clarify, Mr. Berkshire, is that comfortable with saying that anything after 3 and up in a calendar year or in a rolling year? you're comfortable with?
I don't have an idea of account. I will truly leave that to you based on your experiences and what is currently out there. I just want to make sure that we have something consistent so that someone down the road says, well, my neighbor got 3 for free. I'm getting charged on the first one, right? That's what I'm trying to avoid.
And I would add to it, my personal opinion would be there needs to be if substantial care was received or up to after your 3rd incident. Because there are those instances where we are arriving, like to your point, for a diabetic issue, we are administering care and we need to recuperate our costs from that call versus for lack of better words, a company call, so to speak. So.
Yeah, and in particular, the advanced life support is a advanced technique. So we go on hundreds of calls a year where we have refusals, where we go and check out the patient and they don't go to hospital and we return it. Those patients do not get billed. So this is very specific to doing advanced treatments and providing that advanced level of care that what I would say is you couldn't do on your own. So, when we go out for the person who falls and scrapes and we Band-Aid or we help somebody back up,
Yeah.
that's charged and that would never be charged under this. This is just for those instances we give that advanced care.
Yeah, and I would say that's what I would go with, David, is even if, you're going to give some advanced care, but if it becomes a habit, is what I'm trying to avoid.
Yep, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
We're trying to keep people out of the emergency room. People go there just because
I
it's,
think what we're trying to avoid is we don't want to become the urgent care on wheels,
yeah.
where you come in, we treat them real quick and then they say, okay, I'm done. So
Thanks for coming.
that idea for our ambulance service, and I always push is that it's a resource for our residents, but it needs to be there for when they need it. And when we take on those calls that are non-emergent in nature, obviously takes away from the potential of having somebody who actually needs that ambulance. That's what we want to try to avoid. Knock on wood, we have other agencies that are near us that are out several times a day doing lifts assist and everything else, which ties up their ambulance. And unfortunately, we did not run into that. Yeah, what we're trying to do is make sure the ambulances is there for those true emergencies.
Lee?
Sorry, just one more question on the extrication thing. So the only comment I would make too is if we're not able to have it, so we could just pick and choose and just say, okay, we're not going to charge it here, but we're going to charge it because it's a DUI or some other, criminal act. Is there a way to structure the ordinance just to say it's 0 unless there's a criminal act and someone got charged with a crime, and that charge only kicks in if there is a crime, if it's reckless driving, if it's DUI or whatever it is that we submit to the state's attorney? That would be good enough for me, given that we don't use, if you're telling me we don't use it anyways, and that's the only time we use it, I'd rather just codify that and call it a day. And that might be easier to do, I'm not sure.
All right. So we'll see what we can do from legal counsel perspective. Thank God we record these meetings now. So not that you're taking great notes, but he can hear it straight from everyone's mouth. And then we will obviously keep the board apprised as the week goes on about what we have. In the meantime, though, Chief, do you feel you have enough direction as far as what to bring forward? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other business from the board tonight? Seeing no, we don't have executive session tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? We are adjourned at 8:12.